All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to break down the invisible mechanics of strategic success, and we're drawing this directly from the powerful tenets found in our source material, the architecture of persistence. Look, if you're a high-level business leader, a founder, or an executive trying to build an organization that actually outlasts the competition, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're skipping the generic motivational fluff. We're looking under the hood at the structured hidden layers that build extraordinary organizational resilience and long-term market dominance. We're going to see how persistence isn't just a nice personal trait, it's actually a highly scalable corporate asset. Let's dive in.
So let's start with the big one, the ultimate question. What is the real difference between market leaders and average stagnant organizations? We look at industry titans all the time, right? And we assume they must have some unique structural advantage or rare genius or, honestly, just incredible blind luck. We see a company capture massive market share and we think, well, they must have an insider secret, or they definitely had a bottomless pit of capital that the rest of us just didn't have. But as we parse through the data and the case studies in today's material, we find that the answer is actually way simpler. And frankly, it's far more demanding on leadership.
The defining characteristic is literally just this. They refused to quit. Every single market-dominating organization you've ever admired has failed, repeatedly, on their path to the top. They've launched products that completely tanked, they've faced brutal public backlash, and they've weathered massive market corrections. The source text highlights this brilliant case study of a consumer hardware founder. Get this, he created 5,126 failed product prototypes over 15 years. 5,000. While his competitors threw in the towel and walked away, basically saying that engineering was impossible, this founder made the choice to build prototype number 5,127. And that one revolutionized a multi-billion-dollar industry. So it's not about avoiding the downturn, it's 100% about the strategic refusal to stay down when the market punches you in the mouth. Section 1. Redefining failure as feedback. This brings us to a massive shift in strategic perception. When an average organization hits a wall, say a botched product launch or a brutal drop in stock price, they immediately view it as a stop sign. They think, okay, the market doesn't want this, or our core idea is totally flawed. But the organizations that actually win long-term, they view that exact same wall as a mirror, reflecting precise areas where they need to improve operationally. The source material outlines this classic case of a major tech conglomerate. They launched this incredibly hyped smartphone, and it became an absolute commercial disaster. We're talking hundreds of millions written off in inventory. But instead of internalizing that failure and having an identity crisis, the executive team externalized it as raw data. They literally took the feedback on the user interface and voice recognition from that failed phone, quietly built the smart speaker category, and captured overwhelming market share. They didn't see a stop sign, folks. They saw a pivot.
The mechanics of that feedback loop are absolutely essential for your corporate culture. Every mistake teaches a lesson. Every setback builds experience. Every challenge makes your structural foundation stronger. When you bake these principles into your company's DNA, you create this incredible, agile feedback loop. Suddenly, setbacks aren't existential threats anymore. They're basically subsidized research and development. Every time your company trips up in the market, you are actually just assembling the institutional intelligence and the armor you need for the future. You aren't losing market share, you're gathering the exact data points you need to aggressively capture it next quarter.
Section 2. The hidden struggle of success. Success is built in silence before it's recognized by the world. Think about the biggest corporate wins of the last decade. The business world, we only celebrate the final public victory. We see the flashy IPO, the unicorn valuation, the perfect merger. But what the media rarely reports on are the quiet, grueling years of totally unglamorous R&D, the painful internal restructuring, the agonizing board meetings, and the immense bootstrapping that actually paved the way. As a leader, it's so easy to compare your messy, chaotic, behind-the-scenes reality to a competitor's polished highlight reel. But the source material is a great reminder here. The foundation of a legacy enterprise is always poured in the dark, miles away from the applause of the market.
Section 3. Mindset. Winners versus quitters.
Let's look at the fundamental difference in how leaders respond when they're operating under immense friction. When macroeconomic headwinds hit hard, when global supply chains snap, or when consumer behavior just flips overnight, stagnant leaders ask, why is this happening to us? And honestly, that question instantly paralyzes an organization. It trickles right down from the C-suite and turns the entire company into a victim of circumstance. It shuts down all creative problem solving. But winning leadership teams, they ask, what can this teach us and how do we leverage this disruption?
One mindset creates excuses and boardroom paralysis, while the other mobilizes the company to aggressively hunt for a solution. The external market conditions are exactly the same for both companies, but the psychological framing from the top dictates a completely different financial outcome.
Section 4. Trusting in invisible progress.
Okay, imagine planting a seed in the soil. For weeks, you water it, you make sure it gets sunlight, and yet absolutely nothing happens above ground. Has your effort been wasted? Of course not. The roots are secretly, desperately growing and anchoring beneath the surface. And this perfectly illustrates the incredibly frustrating lag between high-level strategic investments and quarterly earnings reports. When you pour millions into company culture, or totally overhauling your tech infrastructure, or optimizing a long-term supply chain, the ROI is almost never visible in the next quarter. The surface looks exactly the same, and impatient shareholders are definitely going to demand to know why. But you have to trust the process. Just because you can't see the immediate revenue bump doesn't mean you aren't building a massive, impenetrable foundation for your organization's future. Now, to survive that prolonged period of invisible growth, leadership requires what the text calls mental strength. Though in a corporate context, let's call it executive discipline. It's the result of repeatedly choosing discipline over comfort when the market gets tough. The source highlights this really powerful case study of a software CEO who made the deeply unpopular choice to kill off their most profitable legacy boxed software division. Why? To pivot the entire enterprise to a subscription cloud model. For years, revenue completely tanked. The market was brutal to them. The natural instinct would have been to just revert back to that comfortable legacy revenue stream. But executive discipline demands that instead of wishing the transition was easier, you hold the line. That period of invisible growth and friction, it was the exact crucible required to forge that company into a modern trillion-dollar cloud titan.
Section 5. The Marathon of Persistence.
Let's apply this to a brutal economic downturn. Our source material details two competing tech firms heading straight into the massive dot-com crash. Let's call them Company A and Company B. In hour one of the crash, both companies are hurting. They're bleeding capital, they're exhausted. By hour two, the pain peaks. Company A decides to stop. They freeze all marketing, halt R&D, and basically hunker down in pure preservation mode. Now, Company B is just as financially exhausted. They absolutely have to slow down their spend, but, and this is key, they keep iterating. They keep a skeleton crew on R&D. They keep talking to customers. Years later, when the market recovers, Company B absolutely dominates the sector. And they didn't win because they had better engineers or more funding heading into the crash. They won simply because they refused to stop moving forward when the environment became unbearable. This brings us to a tremendously liberating truth for modern business leaders. You don't always have to move fast. You just have to keep moving. We are constantly sold this dangerous myth of blitzscaling and hypergrowth at all costs. But the reality is, reckless scaling often destroys companies from the inside out. Real, sustainable market capture takes time. Persistence and consistent momentum yield infinitely better long-term shareholder value than these frantic, unsustainable sprints that just burn out your absolute best talent. If your organization simply keeps moving, optimizing, and iterating while your competitors give up or implode because the returns are taking too long, then persistence itself becomes your ultimate, unstoppable competitive moat. As we draw this strategic briefing to a close, I want you to consider this reminder from the text. Your breakthrough could be one more step away. Whatever complex M&A deal's stalling on your desk right now, whatever critical product pivot feels utterly impossible today, remember that the industry titans you benchmark yourself against felt exactly the same way before their defining breakthroughs. They faced the exact same board pressure, the exact same frustrating invisible progress, and the exact same temptation to just cut their losses and retreat. But they made the choice to take that next strategic step. I'm going to leave you with this final, totally uncompromising question drawn straight from the heart of the source material. 1 year from now, will your organization be the undisputed market leader you envisioned? Or will you be drafting really careful explanations for your board of directors about why you lost market share? The mechanics of strategic success are no longer invisible to you. The blueprint is right there in front of you, and the choice is entirely in your hands. What is the one decisive step you will take today to guarantee your organization outlasts the competition? Thank you so much for exploring the architecture of persistence with me today. Keep your organization moving forward.